All right, let's get started. Thank you everyone for coming today. So hello, we are Mindflight7. Today we're going to be doing, as I'm sure you've already read on the screen, is how virtual reality is helping educate, engage, and get students future ready. So my name is Liam. I'm the one who's currently talking. Our team members will introduce themselves as we go along. So we've got a nice little trailer just to give you guys a brief intro into what we do, which I already have open. So that's a nice little wow part of the company. So this is some of the team. So we're currently based in Australia. Our main office is in Melbourne, and we currently have a WA team based in Perth. The Perth team being on the right and the Vic team being on the left. So once again, my name's Liam. You can see we've also today presenting, we've got Kelly, Arpit, Paolo, and Tiffany, which I've conveniently made lines for everyone if you can recognize. So we all come from different parts of the business. Kelly herself is a careers coach, and that's where a lot of her experience is. Myself personally, I've currently at university, and I'm one of the event coordinators in Perth. Much Paolo is our Perth manager, and Arpit is also the same, and Tiffany as well. So kind of what we do. So Mindflight7, so we pioneer a little bit about us is that we pioneer a transformative approach to learning using virtual reality. So we spark enthusiasm in students by providing them with an immersive VR educational experiences tailored to specific subjects and potential career paths. We pride ourselves on our versatile delivery methods, whether it's through short-term in-school engagements or comprehensive integrated VR programs. We bring our state-of-the-art VR technology and career insights right into the doorsteps of high school students. Our commitment extends to learners across Australia, ensuring they have access to location-agnostic, cost-effective, and immersive VR learning journeys. With Mindflight7, students, regardless of where they are, gain clarity and direction for their future choices. So that's just a nice little intro about what we do. So today's agenda. So we're going to be going through a few things today. So we're going to be talking about what is VR, problems today that kids struggle with, who we are and what we do, the usefulness of VR and the shifting job landscapes and the future. And we'll closure with addressing common challenges, and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. So there's not too many of us here, so I might just say, first of all, how many of you guys, obviously, Angela just talking, you have some experience with VR, but if you'd like to put in the chat, if you've used VR before in any capacity, whether that be through entertainment purposes, or maybe you've seen something at an expo, if you want to just say in the chat if you've done anything. Even a simple yes or no is fine, or you can type a lot more, it's up to you. Yeah, who is new to VR? Is this a completely foreign topic that just interests you? That is fine. So we'll move on. So as we've just heard, I think we've got a few people who are familiar with the VR. So I'm going to do a quick rundown of what virtual reality is for those that may be unaware. So VR, as you probably could have guessed, stands for virtual reality. It refers to a computer-generated simulation of a three-dimensional environment that can be interacted with in a seemingly real or physical way using specialized equipment such as a VR headset, controllers, and sensors. For our case, we use the MetaQuest 2s, so all we need for that is a headset and controllers. The goal of VR is to create an immersive experience for the user, where they feel like they are present inside the virtual environment and can interact with it as if it were real. VR technology has many applications, such as gaming, education, training, and therapy. The Harvard Institute of Technology shows a student is 300% more likely to finish a degree when they do a hands-on practice like an internship or on-site experience. At Mindflight7, we aim to replicate this by having a medium where students can use what they've learned on a theory sense and apply it to a practical sense. So ourselves personally, we currently have a library of over 200 educational apps, and we're always constantly improving on that library. We're constantly updating our list and always looking to improve to get the most current and available experiences. We currently have multiple partnerships, or in the process of multiple partnerships with multiple companies to get all the best apps in the market at the moment, because there's a lot out there. So VR technology has many potential uses for students, both inside and outside of the classroom. So I'll quickly go through some brief ideas. So virtual field trips for one. So VR can enable students to explore and experience different parts of the world without leaving the classroom. For example, students can take a virtual field trip to a historical site. I know we have one where you can go to the Leaning Tower of Pisa. That's the word I almost forgot. Or any other natural wonders. We provide immersive learning environments such as for training, like we have a forklift simulator, we've got dissections, we've got a whole bunch, and we can use that in combination with the traditional classroom materials. Special education such as VR can be used to create specialized learning experiences for students with special needs. For instance, like having exposure to social experiences for students who are neurodiverse. And as we're talking about before, career exploration. So we can have students try before you buy method, so they can try something like open heart surgery to see if kids get an interest or a passion for it. And also, as I kind of mentioned before, we can also use it for stress and anxiety management. So there are a lot of like thoughtfulness and mindfulness programs during VR. And overall, just to say, like VR technology can provide a more engaging, interactive, and immersive learning experiences for students, enabling them to explore, experiment, and learn in new ways that were previously impossible. So don't take my word for it. There's a lot of research and academic studies in regards to the use of virtual reality in classrooms. We have one by the Swinburne University where students were assigned to create a problem-solving game using virtual reality, computer applications, and board games. In every scenario, the virtual reality medium was always found to be much higher than the others. So there's a lot of, particularly since 2021, there have been a lot of academic discussions in regards to virtual reality in education, whether that be from everywhere from high schoolers to higher tertiary educations. We're seeing more and more development being done, and we're seeing more and more the positives of virtual reality in these environments. So we can see a whole bunch of research in regards to different kinds of applications, whether that be from health, the other sciences, humanities, and a role of students in maintaining information, and a whole bunch of other stuff. If you ever get the time, I recommend reading some of these articles or books. They're quite interesting. So a survey or prediction made by the PwC was predicting that by 2030, 23 million jobs will be using AR and VR in one way or another. We're not 100% sure what that may look like at this point in time. We'll be using the current headsets as we know, or it'll be something completely different. As you see, Apple recently released their new headsets, and that's primarily focused on hand movements and eye tracking. So this is not just a fading or fad technology. It's something that the workforce will be currently using. And with that in mind, there are a whole bunch of sectors who are already embracing VR. I know for an Australian context, a lot of the mining companies use virtual reality for their training programs or learning how to drive the big 5-ton trucks for mining. Health, even from simple things as Woolworths is beginning to implement VR in their training programs. So traditionally where you would do the computer modules online, it's like, how this customer's approaching you, how do you react? They actually have set up virtual environments where people can learn how to train and talk to customers using virtual reality. So I'm going to pass you on to Kelly, who's going to focus more so on our student careers. So off to you, Kelly.
Thanks, Liam. Yeah, so as a career coach, I work with students in high schools where we've designed and facilitate career programs, STEAM-based career programs, trades-based career programs, and the like. And we facilitate those with discussions and activities. It's not purely just the students in the headsets. So we've got some great programs that we run and continue to run. And we know why it's so important to be using, as career professionals. We know that the need to get kids excited about STEAM subjects is huge, because that's where most of the job growth is. And it's where traditionally it's harder to get students and attract students to follow those paths. But what we find with our careers programs and our STEAM programs, students actually are excited by science and STEAM subjects. We hear back all the time about how students think, oh, I couldn't do that. I didn't think that would be for me. And they do one of these career taster programs or these STEAM incursions, and they actually start to see and reflect on what they like and see that they've got those capabilities and interests. And we know, there's an article to link here, the 100 Jobs of the Future. We know that while VR might not be a part of all jobs, it will certainly form a part of onboarding and training at a minimum. And as Liam was saying, it's used extensively in mining, in defence. St John's first aid training is actually now part of their program, and they obviously, teachers each year have to do those programs, the first aid training. A part of their program incorporates VR. We're at EduTech this year. A lot of the banks are even looking at VR training. I know through a friend, someone missed out on a marketing job, because they hadn't done marketing in VR. They didn't know how to use VR. So obviously the big companies are also building their own programs and experiences in virtuality. So there'll be jobs which are heavily VR focused, of course, but chances are VR will evolve, as Liam was suggesting. It might not be the big headset and controller. It will become probably more sort of slimline, but it will be a part of a lot of the students' work life. Trades are using VR a lot as well. They can, architects and tradespeople can design and build things that they couldn't build before without this capability. So even trades-based roles will also have a VR component. We know that obviously technology is changing things rapidly, and obviously with COVID and that sort of accelerated Zoom and the like, and how things are being done remotely. There's lots of research and lots of reports suggesting, there's the World Economic Forum, the 2023 report too, suggesting that a quarter of the jobs will go. Jobs will change too, but obviously there's about 14 million jobs that will actually just go. Some jobs will evolve into new things, but of course AI, robotics, all those things will start to take over. Jobs in sustainability, environment, robotics, driverless cars, engineering, all those kind of jobs are where the growth area will continue to be. And it's, we're really excited about the future and what it holds for students, and how VR can help get them excited and give them tasters and get them using these tools, which will be a part of their working life. So there's lots of great jobs too in this jobs report. Some are quite amusing. There's even there's one which I love. It could be, so for elderly people in elderly homes, you create their life through VR, so they can sit and go on holidays and live those. You kind of create their life experiences for them to watch in nursing homes. Also, I was reading recently in a psychology magazine, they're starting to use psychology for VR and psychology to train the psychologists. So you can also empathize and understand what's going on as a part of the patient. That's also used in nursing homes, so aged care workers can understand what the world looks like to someone with dementia. So we're starting to see VR being used in all sorts of ways. Obviously, like a cyborg psychologist, which would be kind of interesting. Obviously, a lot around robotics, where you'll start to see VR being used. And even if we look at our team today, this is the 3rd year that Mindflight7 has been going. Who would have thought that, there's VR and events coordinators? These roles have emerged, and all the kind of roles that we do at Mindflight7 weren't necessarily careers 5 years ago. So it just shows you how quickly these careers are changing and evolving, which again is really, really exciting. Thanks, Liam. I'll hand over to Tiffany, I think.
Thank you.
Yes, hi everyone. This is Tiffany, and I'll be talking about the future applications of VR technology. As it evolves, its growing applications across various industries are reshaping our future. I'll be talking more in depth about 2 of the major industries involved, which are education and training and healthcare. So starting with the one we're all familiar with is education and training, which doesn't just involve school education, but any sort of interactive learning and training for jobs or qualifications. With VR, people can learn through experience in a risk-free space. It's consistent, inclusive, and affordable. And with the increasing applications we see today, it's predicted that traditional schooling systems will break down and become a more diverse and digital space in the near future. So we are expecting VR development so that the content for each individual can be personalized and will be able to use body information, facial expressions, and even neural signals. For example, there's eye tracking technology that can enhance the overall visual experience, and haptic feedback technology can provide learners with a more realistic sense of touch using new devices like haptic gloves and even full body suits that enable real-time physical feedback when interacting with virtual objects. This will be vital for creating a believable virtual environment as if it was the real thing, making the learning experience as good as it can be. Another new technology we're expecting is VR models that can cater to different types of disabilities. This includes VR augmented aid that offers the ability to manipulate settings such as text, color, and audio commentary for those with visual or hearing impairments. As these technologies become more advanced, they'll allow learners and students to interact with these virtual environments in new and exciting ways. Now, moving on to healthcare. So while VR has already begun to be used for some medical education and learning, such as surgery training, evidence for broad implementation of VR platforms in the clinic is limited. Therefore, several practical challenges need to be addressed before VR can be fully incorporated into daily practice, which will help clinical care be more robust, patient-centered, and safe. There are several various applications we can expect in the future once VR is implemented in the clinic. For example, VR can be used as a treatment for mental health issues. Currently, virtual reality exposure therapy has been used for treating anxiety, phobias, and PTSD, where the patients are immersed in a safe and controlled environment. According to studies, VR therapy has been really effective with positive results, so we're expecting this technology to advance and become more common and can hopefully help treat other mental health issues as well. Now, similar to the process of VR therapy, VR will be able to enhance a patient's experience by distracting them when undergoing complex procedures and treatments like surgery and even labor. This will make the process faster and easier for both the patient and practitioner. VR technology is also evolving for cognitive behavior therapy and other behavioral principles such as deep relaxation and attention shifting to aid in pain relief, especially chronic pain, which can be a difficult thing to treat. And lastly, with the popularity of remote consultations during the COVID pandemic, it is looking like VR will be the next thing for remote consultations, enabling patients and doctors to connect in a virtual space. This would also be vital for those with physical conditions that are difficult or prevent them from visiting a clinic. We can even expect a full VR clinic where procedures such as surgery can be performed remotely using the combination of new VR and haptic technology. All in all, the application of VR technology in the near future seems like it's full of positive new things that can benefit all of us, and it's definitely something to look forward to. Now, we have a short video that showcases haptic feedback gloves, giving you a better idea of what the new technology may look like in the future.
Hey!
Rico, you're on. One, two, three, four. I declare a four. Go!
Oh!
Gotcha.
Oh.
Good try.
Cool. I'm going to pass the mic to Arpit now to talk about our WA perspective. Thank you.
Alrighty, guys. Nice to meet you all. I'm Arpit. Today, I kind of want to talk to you guys about engagement and education, problems today that kids struggle with when it comes to education and how VR works to counteract that. So I wanted to highlight two major sources of disengagement when it comes to students today. One of those is the lack of motivation, and the other is uninspiring and kind of complex material. The reason I wanted to highlight those two things is for two reasons. The first is because I'm a university student, and those are things that have been issues for me, kind of throughout my high school journey and also going into university. And the second reason is because of how effective VR is when it comes to neutralizing these two issues. So the first thing that I kind of wanted to talk to you guys about is that lack of motivation when it comes to VR. The reason why VR is so effective when it comes to kind of counteracting that is because it allows students to have kind of a more hands-on approach towards education. Being in these environments, they don't just get to hear about what they're learning, but they actually have the chance to experience it. And it's teaching that kind of leaves students with a more lasting and memorable impact than just traditional forms of learning. So the one thing that I did want to emphasize, because I feel so strongly about it, is that VR isn't just kind of the end all be all of it all. What it is in its current form is that it's a perfect counterbalance to theory. So it works hand in hand, and it should be going in tandem with kind of theory, workbook, textbook work. And that's when it's most effective. So a great example of that would kind of be within our Mindflight7 chemistry simulator. You would maybe spend the first half an hour of the lesson doing theory, and then you'd be able to see the things that you're learning in a safe, immersive environment. And in terms of practicality, it kind of works great for teachers as well, because you don't have to work with, you don't have to send home notes and stuff to ask whether or not students can, engage in these activities. You can just bring out the headsets and place students in these environments where they get to see the things that they're learning play out. And that's why it's especially effective when it comes to uninspiring and complex materials, because I'm kind of a visual learner, as I think a lot of students are, and it's a great way to kind of approach that. And in terms of sort of the lack of motivation, another aspect that I've learned especially is that students love VR, like a lot, because of kind of this new technology that they get to experience unique things. A lot of students are already really passionate about that. So kind of what we do and kind of what our job is to utilize that passion in kind of an education format. And that's why what we do, I think, is so important. So that's sort of why engagement and education and VR go hand in hand. It's also a great way to teach transferable soft skills. So one of our exercises is the coffee shop simulator. And in that, you not only learn how to, make a coffee, but you also learn a lot of soft skills like time management, adaptability, and organizational skills. And that's all happening while a student is in this environment and they're just doing these activities, but they're learning as they go. And, oftentimes they're so immersed that they don't even notice that they're picking up all of these soft skills that they're then going to utilize across a range of, across the rest of their life. So, yeah. That's why in terms of engagement in education, VR is definitely one of the things that is a great way to counteract a lot of issues that we have today. So just moving on to another topic, which goes hand in hand with this, is equity in education. And this is kind of the WA focus, where in regards to kind of how WA is set up, there's a map there for you guys to look at. We've got a lot of rural towns. So Perth is there down the bottom in the corner for a lot of the international people watching. But we've also got a lot of towns across WA. And they're often, because WA is so big, they're often kind of in very remote regional areas where, they don't always or have access to resources. So that's what VR kind of works to counteract as well. It sort of neutralizes and equalizes a lot of the problems that rural students face. They're not always privy to a lot of the resources that children in urban areas are. And that goes for students from lower socioeconomic areas as well. But when it comes to VR, they're able to kind of access resources that they would otherwise not be able to. For example, a student that might not be able to visit SeaWorld would be able to access Ocean Rift, which is one of our applications, which lets them kind of explore the deep sea and a range of different areas and learn a lot about the biology down there and kind of how it interacts with the environment. Often things that they would only be able to otherwise read in a textbook. So that's one of the examples. Another one would be language classes, nature treks, and just kind of the entire library that we've got is great when it comes to that. And we've come to find, especially in a lot of the kind of flights that we've worked across WA, regional students especially have a great reaction when it comes to VR. They have greater engagement because it is this unique experience that they don't often get. So moving forward, I guess something like a virtual classroom would be a great way to bring more equity when it comes to education, because even with the social aspect, a lot of these remote communities, you don't really get to meet a lot of the people that you would if you were in Perth or if you were in Melbourne or any of those more urban areas. So it's kind of a way to get greater engagement from students through allowing them to interact with these unique environments. And also in WA, we have a teacher shortage. And I don't think it's just WA, it's probably across Australia and maybe the world. That's just kind of the nature of how it goes. I'm sure you guys would know much better than me. It's also a great way for these students to get access to teachers and teachers to get access to a greater number of students who they can help and educate. That's just kind of bringing equity and education and how that ties into engagement and what VR is doing for students around the world. So I just kind of wanted to throw it two words, either Liam or Paolo, if they wanted to give an example. I might give an example afterwards as well.
Yeah,
either of you
sure.
jump in.
So we work with a couple of schools. You can see on this map here that Western Australia is the size of a lot of smaller countries even. We are almost half of the geographical area of Australia, which in itself is a continent. So just a little bit of context for anyone who might not be familiar. So you can see there on the map, we are over there in Perth at the bottom, and we serve an area that goes all the way into the outback. So that whole red area you can see there is actually the Australian outback. So that's the desert. And then the very top there you can see is sort of like the tropical area, like you see on the postcards. So as you can tell, the geographical distance between these different towns from each other can become an equity issue for the reasons Apit was saying. You know, there might not be enough staff. They might not have enough access to, you know, certain educational programs or resources, but VR can help to mitigate that by, for example, we had the example of the language classes. We've had some classrooms here. For example, a French teacher we had wanted to do a virtual field trip where they could actually take their students to Paris, and they could go look at the Eiffel Tower. You know, they could have a discussion about how the Eiffel Tower is important, you know, the history and the culture of the French. And then we can also walk around the corner and we can go see another landmark, and we can actually engage with the city like we were actually there and, you know, touring through. And that can be a lot more engaging than just reading about, you know, these different landmarks separately. Whereas we can go there and we can see how they're connected, not just by, you know, their shared importance in the culture, but even just that the fact that they're across the street from each other, right? Another really great one is we've been working with an Islamic school that's called Al Taqwa College, and they were actually able to give their students the opportunity to go to the Hajj, because the Hajj is, you know, a very culturally important place for them. They weren't able to go there for their pilgrimage over the COVID pandemic. So one of the solutions we were able to provide was to be able to show them the Hajj in VR. And that was such an impactful experience for them that even, you know, we had a few of the students that were so moved by it that they were actually even crying, because they actually thought that, you know, their chance to go to Hajj was, you know, gone because of the pandemic. They didn't think they were going to be able to do that. But, you know, because of this new and emergent technology, they were able to have that experience in some capacity, right? It's not going to replace their real pilgrimage, but it was enough for them to be able to just, you know, feel included and feel like they weren't missing out just because of, you know, what was going on in the world at the time. So we're actually going to pop over to the next slide now. And I hope you remember a little bit of this map, because we're now going to talk about some regional needs that each school has. So we all know that depending on where in the world you live, the type of jobs that might be available to you might be different as well. So you can see here we've got a few different examples of some of the towns that we visit often. They all have their own needs depending on what kind of jobs are available and, you know, what is available for the students to try out. So before we get into this, I just want to bring up one of the core slogans or sayings of our company. So we say all the time, you know, seeing is believing. You can't be what you can't see. Okay, so we've got to remember as well, one of the main things that Mindflight7 tries to promote is actually being able to access, you know, being able to try these different jobs where that you might not be able to try out in your town, but also you might not even know it exists just because, you know, it's not something that's visible to you. But in the case of these towns here, they have very strong industries that are very realistic for their students to eventually get into in some capacity. So for example, we have Margaret River, which is, you know, 2 hours south of Perth. So it's pretty accessible to the city goers who live here. So it's well known for its tourism and hospitality. They have beautiful wine country out there with heaps of grape farms and also lots of cafes and places to host all of the people who come down for, you know, that beautiful scenery. So they have a lot of coffee shops around there. That's something that's really popular. So we've done careers programs for the kids down there to actually try out, you know, being the manager of their own coffee shop, right? Because that is something that's very relevant for them. Even at their school, they have a program where they have a coffee machine that's on a cart, and they push the coffee machine around and make coffee for the teachers. So they have a rotation of all the students, and they take turns making coffee for staff. So maybe that's something you want in your school as well. Good way to get your coffee in the morning. You just get your students to make it. But yeah, so it kind of shows how, that is something that it's almost expected of them to know. Otherwise, it'd be difficult for them to find a job while they're growing up, before they leave high school. So
Can I jump in there for a second too, Paolo, to say
Yep.
that, so we do, like you said, with the different industries, different regions, there's sort of an industry focus. However, we also, with our careers programs, some of the students will stay in those towns and work in those towns. Some of the work that we do, particularly around STEAM, they might actually work from their town, but doing something tech related or engineering related for a business in America. Or the student actually might want to go and leave and work in another part of the world. So we try to factor in all of the different scenarios, don't we, Paolo, with kind of what we expose them to. So look, probably most of the children might stay, but some children might stay, but they are really curious about STEM careers. And they can now, these days, they can do them remotely, right?
That's right.
We really want to bring the world to the children and show the children the world so they can make more informed choices rather than being limited by, Paolo was saying, all that they see around them is all that they see for themselves in terms of possibilities, which is sort of limiting.
Yeah, so we actually went to a school in Broome. So if you saw the map earlier, that's at the very, very top of WA. So it is, minimum 4 hours drive from any other town, even though it is quite a large town itself. But even a couple hours south from there, so it's 2 hours away, we had a school that was within a closed Indigenous community. So basically, they are not allowed, but they don't take just anyone into the community. You have to have a certain reason to visit in order to go out and get into that area. So they had us come over to work with some of their grade 5s to 7s and some of their upper school students as well. And part of the reason behind that program was to actually just give them a chance to have a look at what jobs are actually like and what's actually out there, because their community doesn't actually have any businesses or any jobs that are available. So they don't grow up around any type of business. They still rely on hunting and fishing and traditional ways of life. So our program had to change its focus. We had to think more about giving them the option to change not just their career but their lifestyle. So going into a different world where money matters and you work for a boss and things like that. So we have to give them a different sort of motivation, because money and rent, those aren't things that they worry about in their normal lives. So instead, we approach it from a more like, what do you need in this community? So they love the hairdressing one because, they didn't need to imagine what it was like to have a boss or how much money they were going to get paid. It was more about, we need someone in this town who knows how to cut hair, even if you just do it for free for your friends, even if you just get good at it because, it's fun, then at least that's something you can get better at and do, even just for mental health reasons, because that's one of the things that they find out there is that even with their traditional lifestyle, they still have trouble with basically being idle for a long period of time. So that can affect their mental health. So getting jobs is one way that they can achieve better sort of stability in their life by having something that can fill out their time and give them a bit of responsibility as well in the community. But we'll just quickly continue with this here. So for example, we also have Geraldton, which is a fishing town. So we gave them an aquaculture lesson, because one of their things that they have going on there is they're having trouble with sustainability when it comes to fishing. So they're pushing people more towards aquaculture rather than traditional fishing. So we provided them with some programs like Ocean Rift, which we talked about before, that lets them actually see the natural ecosystems underneath them and learn about why we need to protect them and why the change from traditional fishing to aquaculture is happening in their town. We had Kalgoorlie, which is all the way in the deep, deep desert. So they're a mining town. So if you've ever seen pictures of Australia where, you know, everything is red and there's kangaroos and there's cactus everywhere, that's where Kalgoorlie is. So they focus a lot on mining and logistics, even just because they're 10 hours away from the coast. Logistics becomes a really important part of their life because, you know, everything has to come by truck or by a plane. So there's a lot of opportunity for them there that, you know, they may feel pressured to actually get into those fields because, you know, that's where all of the money is in terms of careers. So we give them the opportunity to sort of look past that and think about what else they might be able to do. Katanning as well is a great one. So you can see here, they're actually the biggest sheep yard in the Southern Hemisphere. So that is the livelihood of most of the people around that area. So we were providing some animal handling courses for them with our Farm VR experiences. And then we even had Broome, which is all the way up north as well. That's the one I was talking about. So things that they think about there are, you know, jobs in pest control, for example, because they're on the northern coast, which is tropical. So they get things like, you know, snakes and saltwater crocodiles even. So it's a reality for them that, you know, there has to be someone out there who has the capability to actually be able to wrangle a crocodile, right? Like, you know, Steve Irwin, right? We need people like him to go out there and get these crocodiles out of people's pools and get them back rehabilitated into the wild. So you can see, you know, the geographic area of WA makes it so that there's such a huge amount of breadth in terms of the material that we need to cover. And I'd find that, you know, you'd be hard pressed to find another company that has the same amount of breadth in terms of careers. Like Kelly was saying, most of the growth area at the moment is in STEAM. So that is where a lot of other companies focus on. But we try to sort of have a good amount of breadth so that there's something for everyone, no matter what the situation may be in your community or your town. So we'll move on to the next slide now, which is going to be talking about the VR room. So I forgot to introduce myself. So I'm Paolo, by the way. I am the event manager here in Western Australia, but I'm also our resident tech expert and also the teacher of teachers. So I run the professional development programs over here in WA for our VR room schools. So you might be asking, what's a VR room school? You can see down the bottom there, we have a banner with the logos of all of our partner schools, some of our stronger partner schools that we have. And these are the schools that have actually opted to not just come on board with our VR journey, but they've also decided to invest in their own devices, like Angela's school has, for example. They've got their own Quest 2 devices and they run our software, and they use them, you know, for various applications in all the different departments that they have. So we help them integrate VR into the everyday classroom flow. So for example, Bandura Senior High School or Secondary School in Victoria, they actually have a very advanced VR program where their principal has actually encouraged their teachers to use VR at least once a week in every class as an exercise to ensure that, you know, it's something that is being used all around the school, and there's, you know, ideas coming in from not just one department like the science department or careers, but you're getting, you know, a wide variety of perspectives of different teachers using it for all types of different things and then comparing notes. We have our designated lesson plans that we actually distribute as well. So we have some lesson structures that we come up with, and these are the ones that we use in our program delivering all over Australia. But we also provide these plans to teachers so that they have an idea of how it could be used in the context of, say, like a 1-hour session. And we also give them the freedom to change these structures around. So this isn't the case of, we give you this material and it has to be delivered in a certain way. It's just a suggestion. We also facilitate that transfer of traditional education to the virtual medium. So what I mean by that is finding ways to integrate traditional methods with VR. So a couple examples are, we don't usually use VR for the entire hour. Normally it'll be like a 20 to 30 minute sort of exercise within an hour. So we might have them do a little bit of VR at the beginning. Let's say they go through a short 360-degree experience where they get to be in a specific locale that is relevant to our lesson. Let's say volcanoes. We go to a volcano because we're learning about that. And then we can come out of the VR and we can do, say, like a worksheet, or we can do a Kahoots quiz. So Kahoots is a tool that they like to use a lot here. It's just an online quiz that you can set the questions, and you can test to see how well engaged they were with the experience. And then you can even have them write something down and have some material to revise for later, right? So it's better to have a mix of these different techniques. Otherwise, it could go in one ear and out the other. You don't want them forgetting that experience that they've just had, especially because they are so interactive and immersive that it can be quite overloading, right? It could be that they saw 10 different super interesting and beautiful and awesome things in the span of only 10 minutes. So it is good to have them do things like write things down or fill out a worksheet to help them remember. And we work with the teachers of the different institutions to come up with their own bespoke program that works autonomously from Mindflight7. So we give them all of the tools that they need to get started and to get into the advanced applications of VR. But at the end of the day, it is their program to do what they like with it. So they have that freedom to see what works with their school and what doesn't as well. So for example, one of the things that we're having to deal with at the moment is that we are becoming the leader of VR in tertiary education. We are working with pretty much every single TAFE in WA now. So TAFE is basically, that's like a vet study or VCAL study, or you can think of that as vocational education for those of you outside of Australia. So we're becoming the leader in vocational education on the tertiary level because of our partnership with those educational providers. They all have a completely different focus because of the exact same factors I was talking about just before. The geographical difference in the types of what jobs are available informs them of what courses they need to provide. So we need to adapt to those needs of the students in those areas as well. So we are not going to teach careers the same way in Geraldton as in Broome, because it's completely different in terms of the needs of the institutions that are there and what kind of audience they have. Okay, so that's going to be it from me for the VR room and also the different regions that we have here in Australia.
So I'm a bit conscious of time, so I'm going to skip that last slide. So we're going to go, that's the end of our main presentation. Thank you for joining and listening for us today. So we're opening up to you guys now. If you have any questions in regards to anything that we spoke about today, or even anything that's related to our company or virtual reality in general, we'd be happy to answer. As Kelly has just said in the chat, we also have Deb, who is another Mindflight7 team member. She's a high school teacher, so if there's any particularly educational questions, feel free, we can direct it to her. So you can either type your question in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask us. So the floor is yours to anyone who has any questions. I guess while if you're typing any messages or so. So one of the things I'll talk about if anyone is typing anything in the chat at the moment, which I will wait until something comes up. So one of the slides I was going to talk about just before was problems we face with VR that we've personally come across as a company. So obviously you have the initial, a lot of people have the idea of the cost of implementation is quite high. So buying obviously these equipments and headsets is quite a bit of money, and a lot of schools can struggle to have those things. But how we've noticed in WA, we have a program called the Career Taster program, which is a government-funded initiative that provides funding to schools to help them with their career choices. And fortunately, we were one of those options. And also, if you think about it from a cost to benefit ratio, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're a school, a private school who's paying for a trip to Europe versus a school that can't do that for their kids, so having a VR opens up the limitless possibilities of potential field trips and other things. So another issue that we come across with is the technical issues and learning curves. It is a new piece of technology, so having people become more and more comfortable with has been a problem. But with strategic planning and implementation throughout the whole process, we're always happy to come across those learning curves. So we want to harness the full effectiveness of virtual reality. Another thing is inclusivity and accessibility. For instance, ensuring all students have equal access to VR, including those with disabilities, is crucial. So tailoring VR experiences that are accessible and inclusive can sometimes be challenging, but that is something that we always coming across. So would this be in the future where we will have stuff like eye tracking and hand movements, so necessarily you don't have to use controllers? And there's constantly new developments with different apps that are catering towards certain disabilities, such as deaf people or other people who may have other problems actually using the controllers. Another thing is a safety and health concern. One of those things we come across is people who are prone to seasickness and car sickness. They can find for first-time users using virtual reality, they can feel sick. And that's something that we deal with every now and then. And we have a whole bunch of methods and steps we have to help prevent those kind of problems. We have like breathing exercises and a whole bunch of other things. And once again, in the future, it probably will be less of a problem because we won't be using bulky headsets. It might be in the form of more sleek, slimline glasses. If there's anything else anyone wants to add to that.
Yeah, so one of the things that we find that's been pretty universal, no matter where we go, because you'd think that, you know, the kids who are out there, for example, in the regional areas or in the, you know, closed indigenous communities that we were talking about, that they might have some issue with, you know, picking up the VR and getting started with it. But I've found that from my experience, even those kids are they're quite used to it. Like even though they're out there and they don't have necessarily that access to, you know, new technologies, they still do have, you know, phones. They still do have computers at school, and they are exposed to these types of virtual reality, because you got to remember that VR doesn't just refer to, you know, whatever is inside of a pair of VR goggles. Facebook is virtual reality, right? Any kind of video that we watch is a virtual reality. And so these kids, they're very in tune to actually how to learn using these type of resources. Like if you think about if a student nowadays wants to learn about something, anything, right, at the basic level, what they're going to do is type on Google and watch say a YouTube video, right? So they're more they're very, very used to using virtual realities to get the information they want. So I've never had a case of, say, like a student is on the International Space Station and they think, oh, what do I do? How do I activate this command console? How do I go over there? They're much more able to figure that out by, trial and error than, someone who might have grown up using mostly text resources or, more traditional learning methods. So it's kind of interesting how they engage with VR. It's very inquisitive, right? So because you get to just try things out and, there's no negative consequence, you can just go and, fly a plane and then crash it and it's fine. Yeah, they kind of learn really well with that kind of flow, like just trying things out, see if it works out, and then, just learning that way. They don't necessarily need to get to the desired outcome right away, which is what we traditionally think of as being, the purpose of education is to get to the outcome. But they're really good at learning in a way that doesn't necessarily seek the outcome right away, but even if it takes you even longer than it would have taken, that feels very organic for them. And there's that sense of accomplishment that I was able to figure it out. So that's one of the advantages of gamified education as well, is that clear sort of objective, and that process that you use to get to that objective can differ, and that's one of the strengths of VR and that kind of education.
So if no one else has any questions,
I
thank
have
you
a question, sorry.
Oh, sure.
Can I ask you a question? It's
Yeah.
all the way from Ireland. I was just wondering about, it's actually Kelly really I was going to ask a question to, the longitudinal studies. Like you noted earlier on about the fact that Harvard had said that 300% the student leaned towards that particular career after having some type of internship or some type of taster. Do you have those that research documents and stuff like that available? The reason why I'm asking you for it is because as I integrate into the school, I want to be able to, like, all the stuff you spoke about today has been fantastic. Like it's really been informative, for me as the ICT kind of leader in here, to be able to engage teachers in this space, because sometimes, as you probably know, and teachers can find these things sometimes a bit of a threat, so it's to engage them in the right space and to ensure that we get buy-in across the board. But I was just wondering, is there any kind of longitudinal studies in education? I know, look, VR isn't that long out as an educational tool, but is there anything that you've come across that'd be really beneficial?
I'll just, Liam, if you can share that contact details slide again. Angela, if you want to send us a message, we can email, we can send you some information about that. And we understand too, for some educators, again, that I guess as Paolo's explaining, children are inquisitive, they're curious, like we say in VR, mistakes are free, they'll figure things out. They have more of a growth mindset, whereas some educators typically, yes, I guess it's sort of showing them step by step the benefits and value of VR. And we actually have, so say with our VR rooms, we've got educators who work with us. We have designed like facilitation guides, app guides. So just as the teacher would kind of select what are they going to run with this particular lesson today, we've got a great kind of formula that we train the teachers so they become comfortable and familiar using our approach, and then they start to design their own. So we do understand that it needs to be it's step by step, sort of show them, tell them, teach them. We give them a chance to do it themselves, kind of replicate what we do, and then they start to come up with amazing things themselves. The other thing we also find is really amazing is that with the VR room schools, the students look at every incursion we run. So we run incursions in the VR room schools. Every incursion, there'll be one student who wants to design in VR. Like they don't want to do coding, they want to build games or experiences. And we also have with the VR room schools, the students who are into tech actually take ownership of the VR room, and you find it becomes a great collaboration between the students and the educators. So leveraging, empowering the students, but also the students help the educators get comfortable with the tech and manage it and become responsible for the headsets. So it's a great way of, and then some of the
Mentoring the
schools,
for the kid,
mentoring them. And it's Paolo said some of the schools are actually running programs through us where the kids actually start to design their own experiences in Unity. Because that's another gross area. The children want to how do I do that? How do I get a job doing that?
Yeah, that's one of the main things that schools want to do most of the time if they're coming into VR from that IT or like media mindset, right? So they're usually thinking about how can we get the content that the students make onto the headsets. And when you have that all set up, so you have the student leaders who they can help the other students if they're having any issues. They also help out the teachers who you guys have a lot of things to do, so sometimes it is easier to actually offload some of the stuff like the daily maintenance onto the students who are the most interested. And it can become like a full like sort of 360-degree kind of experience for them, because they will start with, say, going out onto location to record a 360-degree video, and then they do the whole editing and putting it onto the headset. But then you also get to have that the gallery part of it, where you can get them to show their peers the work that they've done. They get to put on the headset and they get to see what's in there. So we've had got one school, I think it was also Bandura or Hume Grammar. They were doing this content creation course that we put together for them, and they were able to make virtual tours of their house, right? They were able to make virtual tours of a landscape or even a hotel, right? So you can see how that changes the scope of media for them. Like before, it was like only kids who want to make film want to do media, but now the kids who want to do real estate, they want to be interior designers, they want to do media too, because what media is changing. Yeah, so that was
and
really
computer
interesting
science
for me.
has been brought in as a subject in Ireland over the last 2 years. It's a brand new curriculum. So absolutely stuff like that, getting students to engage in VR through getting them to develop their own stuff is really clever.
It's very important. And like you said, Angela, too, you've got the headsets. The hardest part is once you get the headsets on the teachers, they start to see, and that's the hardest thing, isn't it? It's easy to dismiss something you haven't done or experienced. So we really gradually work, and we often find there's a group of like really curious, innovative teachers that get it started, and then it's through ongoing PD events and inviting them and showing them that you start to convert the other teachers.
And do you have a community set up by any chance of teachers and stuff like that?
We do have through our VR room schools. They have an online portal on the site, and we run stuff for them.
Yeah.
Very good.
That's one of the things that we are currently developing. Is we call it the Connected Classroom series, or you might be familiar with the metaverse, right? So basically, it's learning in the metaverse. So we could have, say, a career expert in, let's say, logistics and mining, or actually say farming and agriculture. That's a good one. So farming and agriculture, there's a lot of different techniques that are, different regions. Again, they're going to use different techniques based on, what kind of animals or whatever their farming subject is. But you can have, say, a conference, like you could have three different people in different parts of the industry. They can come online and they can talk in the metaverse in front of a group of students. But now this isn't tied to geography. I don't need to go to like a hall or like auditorium and get all my kids to sit there. This can be just any classroom, but they could also be talking to 5 different schools at once, right? And that's something that we've been thinking about. That's
not too far away.
No,
that's, but we're working on that.
Like in Imagine, that platform is Imagine, isn't it? The one that they use. Well, the one that the Irish guy set up. It's Imagine. I don't know if you know it, but it's a platform that I've been in for Metaverse, and they do meetings like that in it already. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, listen,
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to
exactly.
go because I have a queue outside my office.
No
of
worries.
boys waiting to get in for some guidance. So listen, lovely to listen to all that. It's been fantastic, and look, it's been a great presentation. It's been really informative, and the things that you're doing is mind blowing, to be fair. And I know it's not easy trying to develop all that stuff and get into skills and stuff like that. So well done. Okay, I'll send you my email address. We can touch base and maybe have a chat. You know, I'm definitely interested in seeing where we can go with it. You know.
Thanks,
All right.
Angela.
Not at all.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Angela.
Kelly.
Awesome.
Take it
Thank you
easy.
for
See
your
lads.
time.
Not at all. Cheerio. Bye.
Thanks.
All right, so we still have a couple more minutes for questions if anyone is interested in submitting one. Otherwise, we'll be looking at signing off.
So yeah, feel free to contact us on our socials. We have our website. We've got more webinars on our YouTube. If you've got any questions or queries, feel free to send any of us on the emails. So there. Thank you very much for coming down today and giving us your time. We hope to see you again in the future. I will sign off unless anyone else wants to have any closing words.
Yep, so if you want to check out any of the other webinars, I've just put the Mindflight7 YouTube channel in the chat there. So go ahead and give that a click and click on subscribe as well so that you can see any of the other webinars that you might miss going up on there right after we do them. So that's going to be it from me. Thanks, guys.
So thank
Catch
you very
later,
much.
guys. Thanks for dropping by.
All right,
Catch
good
you. Have a
night
good
or
one.
good morning or good afternoon.
Wherever you are.
Wherever you are.
are.